In this episode, we speak to Nam Nguyen, who's a DJ with the Operatives and also a social worker as well. We dive into his personal story about how he retraced his family's steps into a Thai refugee camp. We talk about straddling two worlds, Vietnamese household in an Australian context. And we talk about all of the different struggles and the tensions that are in third culture kids or bicultural kids as well. This episode is targeted for Vietnamese Australians or those who live in those bicultural contexts as well. So tune in. This is one you don't want to miss. Nam, welcome to the OKIRU podcast. Great to have you here today.
Thanks for having me.
When we begin our podcast, we like to sit in a moment of mindfulness, and it's very much for us, but as well as sharing the experience with the guests as well.
Beautiful.
And it allows us to land, because we know you've taken time to come here out of your schedule. And so I'll invite you to find a comfortable seat where you can maybe sit and find some mindfulness for the next 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I encourage you to maybe place your feet firmly on the ground, find some alignment with your seated posture as well. And if and when you're comfortable, perhaps closing down your eyes and finding some stillness with where you're at the moment.
Okay.
Finding and recognizing your inhales. Big, deep breaths in. Feeling your chest rise and your belly expand when you're inhaling and receiving your breath. Mindfulness meditation is not about removing all thoughts, but recognizing that thoughts come and they also go. Perhaps taking notice of when your inhales transitioned into an exhale. Is there a moment of weightlessness or suspension? And there are many dimensions to your breath and recognizing it as well. Can you feel the nose hairs, your nose hairs tickle as you inhale and exhale? And throughout the podcast today, there'll be themes of culture, the thing that connects us both here today. And one of my inspirations, Thich Nhat Hanh, is a big leader over the years in mindfulness meditation. And a practice he shares is when you're breathing in, know that you're breathing in. And when you're breathing out, know that you're breathing out. If you find your mind wandering, capturing thoughts, then bring it back to your inhales and your exhales. So Nam, you and I sit here and we share culture, our Vietnamese culture, Vietnamese Australian culture. But we're on lands that our parents came from after many years of living in Vietnam. But there's also another wisdom here, a wisdom of many millennia, too many to count. And here in Sunshine, we're on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country. And I want to honour our First Peoples, their connection to the land, their connection to the skies, and all the waterways that we have around here as well. So in your own time, taking 3 big inhales through your nose and out of your mouth. In through the nose and out through the mouth. And as we exit this meditation, you might want to maybe face the ground and gently opening up your eyes and just wandering your vision just all around the room. It's a practice called external orienting. And it just might help you land as you exit in the meditation and appreciating the environment, the scenery, and in newer and kinder eyes as well. So I'm curious, how do you find stillness in your days?
That was really good. I haven't done mindfulness in about 3 years, I'd say. Actually, yeah. So I did a lot during COVID.
Yeah.
It was incorporated as part of my self-care routine, especially with the work that I was doing. So that was nice to revisit that, because I think coming out of COVID, everyone just wanted to get back into things, and I dropped that off. So that was nice. Thanks for bringing that back for me.
No, you're
appreciate
very
it.
welcome. Yeah.
Yeah.
So how was your COVID period? Did you play a lot of music during that time?
Yes and no. I mean, I was still listening to music because that meant a lot of producers were stuck at home.
Yeah, yeah.
With no choice. So there was a lot of music coming out, which was great. I didn't really get into that live stream space from home. But I was also working. So I was really busy with that and trying to actually manage homeschooling my son at the same time.
Yeah.
So my hands were quite full. But yeah, what an experience that was. It's strange that it was only a few years ago, but it feels like a lifetime ago now.
It does. It truly does.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're straddling different lives, right?
Yes.
You've got your DJ career, but also your social work career at the same time. But as a Vietnamese Australian, it's a untypical, not common career path. And I've admired your work for some time, and you've reached the pinnacle of music playing and DJing in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Think?
Yes. Thank you for the kind words. I appreciate it. Look, I've been able to accomplish some pretty big achievements through music.
Yeah.
That I'm pretty proud of. But that's taken a long time to get to that point where I'm proud of the things that I've achieved.
Yeah.
You know, there's that saying of, you know, when you get to the top of one mountain, you're at the bottom of another. So, and coming from, you know, the Vietnamese Australian background, you're always trying to strive for more. You're trying to achieve again and again, because it's ingrained in us from our parents, especially, you know, from a refugee standpoint, moving to a new country, that we do have to consistently prove ourselves time and again. So with music, it was, when I started out DJing, it was purely a hobby. I think I have undiagnosed ADHD.
Yeah.
So I was constantly looking for things to do.
Yeah.
And with DJing, you are constantly doing things. And so I think it was a hobby, passion for music, and it just grew from there. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have these goals. Like, it was, this is awesome. I love sharing music that I play, and I love seeing people dancing and smiling and the energy that radiates from that. So I just went with that. But the things that I've done, like I played across most festivals, the big ones anyway. I mean, I go way back because I'm old, but you know, I've done Summer Days, I've done Stereosonic, I've done Rainbow Serpent, I've done, you know, Let Them Eat Cake, which is still going.
Yeah.
I'm still getting booked for a festival. I'm not sure I can announce it yet, but I've been booked for another one.
Yeah.
And I've done things like playing at the NGV, which to me is probably, festivals aside, that for me is like an incredible achievement, right? Coming out of COVID, they were trying to encourage people to come out again. And part of they had an exhibition called the Triennial Exhibition.
Yes,
And I remember seeing that they were advertising, we want DJs to apply. I was like, I applied, and I said, Jerry, man, you got to get us in there. Like, you really got to get us. This is a great opportunity. And he knew someone at the NGV, I think. He had a connection. Yeah. And so we were able to get in on there, and you know, they set up a glass box at the front of the entrance. And it was a triennial exhibition. It was really busy.
A lot of numbers through.
For
triennials.
Yeah. So they had like a stage in the garden area and one this glass box in the front. And I just thought to myself, when I first started DJing, never in my wildest dreams did I think that I would be performing at the front of the NGV, the National Gallery of Victoria.
Yeah.
And, you know, the significance behind that, or the moment wasn't lost on me.
Yeah.
So that for me is probably one of my best experiences as a DJ. It wasn't about the crowd. It was just about you're just curating music in an art space. for people walking past, and they're curious and they want to know what it's about. And
At a cultural institution.
yeah,
In where home is.
correct.
As well. Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool.
And what year did you first started DJing then? Because the scene must have many scenes in here in
Yeah.
Melbourne and our creative scene, right? But
Yep.
when you started all those years ago, I'm curious to understand what it was like, what year it was, if you can
Yeah,
put
so
a number onto that as well.
it was around 2001, 2002. So the story goes that I was working a telemarketing job. Yeah, shitty telemarketing job. Just because if I wasn't working, I don't know what I was doing, right?
Yeah.
And I made friends with this guy by the name of Rob. Shout out Rob. And we'd hang out, and we just talk a lot. And he was really into drum and bass and the UK sounds, and
Yeah.
so we started listening to a lot of that music, and we started going to gigs together. And he influenced me into buying records and going on the internet at the time, and which was, it's so different to what it is now. Finding mixes and take for like a day or two to download them.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And listen to it and study it, and every chance or opportunity we got where one of our friends or somewhere had like decks and turntable, we'd go and just play around and teach ourselves. And I ended up buying a ton of records every weekend, spending all my money on buying records, and I started off just being a drum and bass DJ. So it wasn't as accessible in terms of like buying other kinds of music and playing like a multi-genre set like I do now.
Yeah.
Right. So it's because it's all digital now.
Were you crate digging?
Oh yeah. So there was a great record store called DMC Records on Commercial Road in Paran. Favorite record store. So they had like for the techno, house and disco and other electronic music was in the front. In the back, in the dingy part of the back, was the drum and bass room.
Right.
Yeah.
It got its own room though.
Yeah, it had its own room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep those people away from. the
Yeah,
rest of the
yeah.
house.
So I used to go in there and just dig through all the new releases, have a listen, see if there were any white labels. And what a white label is a record that's been remixed without approval, right? So they've perhaps taken an R&B song,
yeah.
remixed it, and it wasn't official.
Yeah.
So you get these white labels with literally just a white label, maybe handwriting on it. And they were the records you want to get, right?
Yeah.
Or test presses, which means that someone's produced a tune, they just want to test it and see how it sounds, and they made a small run of it. And you might get like an early copy before it gets officially released.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's how I started. And then I moved in with a friend who had records, and we used to stay up on the weekends and just teach ourselves how to mix. And then meeting the right people, promoters, and getting going to open deck nights. So there were bars that would have like an open deck night on a Monday or Tuesday, and they figure if they just have people book in, they'll bring their friends, and
Yeah.
and that's how I kind of practiced playing out in a bar environment as well. So I played for free and taught myself, brought my friends, and that kind of thing.
But it's putting in those countless hours of work and building the craft.
Yeah,
as well,
but
isn't it?
at the time, you don't frame it that way. You're just like, I'm obsessed with this tune. I want to know how it sounds mixed. That's all it is. Like, have you listened to this? Have you got this? Have you listened to this? It was just, it wasn't even, we weren't even thinking about it as practice as such.
Yeah.
It was just having fun and connecting with your friends through music. For me, it didn't become a business, so to speak, until a lot later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How long? How much later? Was it like 10 years on?
Yeah,
7 years on?
that's a good number.
Yeah.
Because at first, when you do it, and you're brand new, you're fresh, you take any gig.
Yeah.
Any gig that's and they're not going to be the best paying one. They're not going to be the best sound system, best equipment. Reflecting on it now, that's how you get your reps in, right? Because practice.
Yeah.
It's all about practice. But around, I think about 10 years into it, when I realized, hang on, I'm actually making okay money from this as a side hustle. I'm starting to get booked for, support acts for touring artists and that kind of thing. that's when you kind of start, for me anyway, I mean, my journey is very different, start going, well, hang on, I can actually earn decent money from this craft that I love doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a big journey, and I think with DJing, I could probably spend like 3 hours talking about it. I really could.
Yeah.
But it's only it's a big part, but also a small part of who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because DJing is a fascinating thing. When I saw you play
Yeah.
at your last official
Yeah.
night at Section 8 residency, I made a very naive observation. I was looking at you play, I'm like, wow, you mix well. I'm like, of course he does. He's been playing for 20 years, right? But these days, especially with how cheap technology is and how cheap decks are, and with Instagram and things like that, everybody is a DJ now.
Correct.
The proliferation of
Yes.
the craft. How have you seen the scene at this present time or in the last few years with everybody learning how to mix music? How has it changed things?
It's changed a lot. So, you know, having been around for so long, there's the purists who will...
There'll always be.
I loosely call them purists. I call them boomers, really. They feel like because they put in the hard yards in a different manner, and that these kids now have it more accessible, that they haven't put in the time to learn their craft. The reality is technology has changed the way we do everything, not just music.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever too many DJs. I think it's great. I think
Yeah.
it's beautiful that everyone can access it the way they do now. Because I think at the core of it, or for me anyway, and it might be different for others, at the core of it, DJing is about sharing music with others that make you happy.
Yeah.
Or invoke some kind of emotion around it. And that's where the human connection lies. And so I think, more DJs the better. I don't care how you do it. I don't care the medium in which you deliver it.
Yeah.
As long as you're having fun, continue.
Yeah.
I want all this new generation, everyone become a DJ.
Yeah.
Because at some level, we all are. It's just because we don't do it on the decks.
True.
Right? You're still curating soundtracks to your life every day. So whether you have your Spotify, your YouTube, whatever it is, you have music that you play, that you connect with, and then you'll share it with a friend.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it.
That's a beautiful way.
Yeah.
The anti-boomer way of
Yes.
sharing music.
Yeah,
and
because
mixing.
as a DJ, again, speaking from a DJ's perspective, you don't want to get caught up in they didn't learn on vinyl, or they didn't, learn on CDs. Like, I don't really care. Like, it really doesn't matter how you learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just keep at it.
And so did DJing keep you away from doing no good then as you grew up? I don't know, how was your upbringing in Richmond as you...
Oh, geez. Look, growing up in Richmond was a time. It was, when you're in it, it was normalized.
Yeah.
When you grow up and you have that separation from it, you realize probably wasn't the best environment for children, but there were positives and disadvantages. You're in your community with other Vietnamese refugee families, so you had that sense of community.
Yeah.
But there were so many safety issues for kids growing up. Like, I remember walking home from school and being chased by another kid who had a knife.
Right.
Yeah, but it wasn't, at the time, we were all laughing and running because we thought, oh, this is funny. But the reality is, it wasn't. And even if that kid was joking, he still had a knife chasing us.
Yeah.
That was the reality. I was in grade 2, I think,
So
with my sisters.
Early 90s or something like that?
I go way back, man. We're talking about like 80s.
Right.
So
Early 80s then.
yeah, and at the
okay.
time, North Richmond, I think it's West Richmond, I can't remember. It's one of the primary schools near the flats.
Yeah.
Us kids found, someone on the park bench passed away.
Right.
Yeah, so as a kid, you don't really process that stuff. But, he was kind of like, I don't want to, how do I frame this? He was a known homeless man in the area, and he suffered from alcoholism, and that's why he passed away on the park bench, but it was in full view of the school. So they're the kind of things that we witness growing up, but when you're in it, it's normalized. Like, this is just part of daily life.
Yeah.
But I also loved it as well, because I didn't feel like I stood out. Because at that school in the 80s, you stood out if you were white.
Yeah, right.
So it was like Timorese, Turkish, Vietnamese. You got the whole spectrum, right? So you didn't feel othered as a child. Everyone kind of just fit.
Yeah.
So my parents decided that it wasn't a safe place to raise us.
Right.
Yeah.
They made that conscious call.
Yeah, they did. And we moved out to Ashburton, which is, southeast suburbs, Melbourne, near Chadstone Shopping Centre.
Yeah.
So I went from a school of lots of ethnic families and children to being one of 3 Asian kids in a primary school of, like, I think there was 70 kids.
Right.
So I went from, like, a school of, like, a lot. I can't remember the exact name, number, but so that was a bit of an eye-opener. Again, as a child, you just adjust and you be a kid.
But more than an eye-opener, it flipped your world upside down.
Completely.
Yeah. How did you go to integrating into a school where you didn't fit in then?
Look, I had my sister with me, so that was good. We spoke English, spoke Vietnamese at home, but learned English at school. So we were well versed in both languages, which helped us adjust really well. At the time, Ashburton in that era was still kind of your working class.
Yeah.
So, you still had other families that were kind of similar in terms of socioeconomic status. So we were able to adjust quite well, but it was still quite different.
Yeah.
Especially our neighbours. We're one of 3 Vietnamese families in the area.
Yeah.
Nowadays, you go into Ashburton, it is so Asian.
Yeah, right, is it?
Yeah, it is so Asian. Lots of, Asian families in there. Like, because...
Driving white Teslas.
They are. Yeah, so that whole area, Ashburton, was all government housing. They were built for returning vets from World War II.
Yeah.
So we lived across... Our neighbour was a vet. He was really nice. Alf was his name. Lovely man. He really welcomed us, him and his daughter, and made us feel at home. And it was quite protective as well, which was really nice. I really enjoyed having him as a neighbour. And when he passed on, we were quite sad. But everyone around us, there were no... It wasn't very multicultural.
But through your journey growing up in a very multicultural area of Melbourne, and then to a less area, an area with less multicultural population, but there was something inside of you that caused a seeking and a yearning.
Absolutely.
Because go on.
And this is something that I think a lot of us Vietnamese Australians, or anyone really that has that kind of dual identity, so to speak. Where do I fit in? I live in a country where the majority of the population don't look like them.
Yeah.
And then our cultural practices, your average Australian family look at us and go, oh, that's a bit weird and smelly, whether it's food or whatever. And the way we live.
Yeah.
And it wasn't till I guess went back to uni and studied that I really tried to research and unpack and learn how to articulate that kind of experience. And I think I found, and this is in my final year doing my honours when I was writing my thesis, I read this scholarly article written by a Vietnamese PhD student around this concept of hybridized identity.
Right. Yeah.
So what that means is, as a Vietnamese Australian, the Vietnamese culture and family structure really aligns itself in the communal concept. And then when you come to a country like Australia, or westernized or Anglo-Saxon kind of societal structures, it's more focused on individual.
Yes.
So
yes.
growing up here at home, it's all about communal, right? So example, when you in a Vietnamese household, it is quite normal for the parents to raise you, put in the hard work, help build you, want you to become successful, because when you're older, the idea is you look after them.
Of course.
You do not send them to nursing homes.
No way in hell.
Yeah. You get married, you don't move out of home. You live with your parents still. So there's this big sense of community. We all look after one another. We do things for each other.
Yeah.
We lift one another.
Yeah.
Whereas in a more kind of Western-centric society, it's all about when you hit 18, you move out, you start living world on your own.
Yeah. You get pushed out.
You get pushed out.
Yeah.
Their parents want an empty nest.
Correct.
So in order to understand or come to terms with that as a Vietnamese Australian is quite challenging, because you want to fit in, but you also want to subscribe to or appease your parents or your family or your cultural traditions. And that's when he termed the concept of hybridized identity, that communal, that kind of conflict that you have there. And I think that's what I experienced a lot growing up.
Yeah.
So, the filial piety, right? So there's this idea that, and this is all Vietnamese. When I speak, and if you've got any Vietnamese audience, they understand exactly what I'm talking about. You do things for your parents and respect, and you kind of place them first. And then there's a hierarchy structure around your siblings as well, eldest and so forth. And if you don't kind of adhere to that, then you're kind of, what's the word? Admonished, I suppose. For what's the Vietnamese word? OKIRU, right?
OKIRU, okay.
Yeah. So what that means is you're not respecting their feelings or what they want. But then on the flip side, what about my dreams? What about what I want to do? Where do I want to go with my life? But it's tied in with your family.
Because you're breaking tradition.
Correct.
You're breaking hundreds, if not years. Or
Well, if you talk to your mum, you're breaking her heart. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
And so that's where the struggle around cultural and identity. Who am I? Where do I fit in?
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, doing my degree really helped me understand that aspect. I still don't think I've fully grasped it all, because I think it's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
Because on my recent trip back to Vietnam, I finally felt home.
Right.
I felt like I'm around my people. But my Vietnamese is so bad now because it's not practiced enough.
Yeah.
But I'm around people that look like me. So
Feels nice, doesn't it?
it does, but you get othered there as well.
Of course, in another element of it.
Correct.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And so that was quite a lot to process. So no matter where I go, I'm going to be othered.
Wow. Wow.
Right? So where is home? And I think, I came across a quote that says, home is a place where you cease to escape.
Yeah.
Right? And I think for people like us, or for me, it's going to be an ongoing thing, I think. Because Vietnam is now opened up to the rest of the world.
Correct.
It's actually quite amenable for people who've grown up in a Western society to go back and live comfortably.
Yeah.
Because when I went back in 2000 with my dad, I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
It was still a country recovering from the war. There was lots of, obviously a lot of homeless people. There was lots of begging, seeing things that were really confronting. I was quite young back then. And so I'd never experienced seeing amputees, for example.
Yeah.
Never experienced seeing really elderly people, you know, with crooked backs walking around trying to sell tickets to make a living, because there is no welfare system in Vietnam. If you don't make money, you starve. And that's where that concept or idea around families look out for each other.
Yeah.
Because you have to.
For
There is no
survival.
safety net.
Correct. The
It's-
family is the safety net.
Your family is your safety net. And if you don't have family, then you're screwed. Because the government ain't looking after you. So they're the really confronting things that I saw when I went back in 2000. But also one of the best things I saw, and one of probably the biggest lessons I learned from that trip, was just seeing a kid on the street, had one shoe on, playing soccer, didn't care, really happy, he was smiling. And I kind of realized at that moment that I think, well, my interpretation of it, he was smiling because it feels good to smile. There had to be doesn't have to be any other reason. And as a child, that's about as, you know, I think it's as good a reason as any, especially when you look at the conditions that they're in. And, you know, I was comparing. So I was like, in my head, I'm like, what have you got to smile about?
Yeah. Yeah. But that was your perception. That was
Yeah.
you putting your feelings onto him.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. My idea of what happiness is.
And that's the interesting thing about growing up in school, or maybe taking an international field trip or something like that, right? A lot of Aussies or Western people go to a third world country or
Yeah.
Southeast Asia, and they're like, wow, they don't have much, but they're happy.
I had that full experience. Totally had that experience.
Yeah.
So learning how to understand my privilege while grappling with the culture clashes at home
Yeah.
was really hard. But at that age, I couldn't articulate that. I don't think many people would have.
Yeah, of course.
And also understanding the concept of intergenerational trauma,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is something that, again, I didn't really learn about until much later on in life. So, you know, my parents essentially had lived in survival mode for their entire lives. So scarcity, all of that. Like my mum's family was so poor, like she couldn't finish high school. Her mum sent her to Saigon to live with her auntie to be the housemaid.
Yeah.
Right, so that's kind of the levels of poverty that my family had come from. So when I think about it like that and reflect on where I am now, man, what they did, the decisions they made for us by escaping the war, is like generational change.
Yeah. Yeah.
But as a teenager, when you're going through all the culture clashes, you're like, they didn't do this for me, they didn't do that for me.
They didn't buy me the PS2
Yeah.
or 1 or the Xbox.
The first Nintendo, mate.
It shows the age gap,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
The generational gap. Yeah.
But the one thing that I will say that they always did, and I'm now passing on to, you know, my son as well, is the love of food and cooking. Again, that's another concept that we have, I think. I mean, look, for most cultures, it's the same.
Yeah.
Food is bonding time.
Yeah.
That's how our parents communicated their love for us. I think the best stories I have about my mum cooking for us is when we were in primary school, when we were still living in the flats in Richmond.
Yeah.
She would cook hot food and bring it down during lunchtime and feed us, and all the other kids would be like real jealous, right?
Yeah.
So that's how she showed her love for us.
Yeah.
And so I try and do the same now for my son, because food is another language.
Of course.
Music is a language, food is a language,
Yeah.
and we use those tools to connect with people and express our love for each other. I think in Vietnam, I think that's huge. You know, growing up, I went to a lot of like family gatherings or family friends, and it was just all about eating.
Yeah.
Right.
And great food and sharing it
Yeah.
all.
And then get gaslit. Why are you fat?
But the first thing when you walk in, it's like, have you eaten?
Yeah. Ăn đi,
Yeah,
you know.
ăn chưa?
Ăn chưa?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, But I love that. I don't have that at the moment, which is okay. But I'm trying to build that with my son. Yeah.
Because you grew up in a time where there were less of these conversations now.
Yeah. It
Because
was taboo.
Yeah, it was taboo, right? But now there's a safety for us, second generation, who grew up and straddled both worlds to talk about these topics as well, because it's, one, it's safer, but it's more common, and it's like hey, actually, Me Too, the Me Too movement, but for us,
Yeah, for us,
cultural
yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
Right? And when you were talking, there was a spark that, for me, that came through in a learning. It's that the privilege comes with a cost, though.
It does.
Right? Sure, we grew up in a first world country, we can speak the language well, but the issue is that there are gaps of belonging and the identity crisis that comes through as well. And it's only through conversations like this and different platforms that we can grow, learn, and take account of whatever traumas that we may have lived through as a kid and couldn't name it or couldn't identify what that was as well.
I completely agree. I couldn't identify, I couldn't name it, I couldn't articulate it. I really had to do a deep dive into learning about myself. It's a process, it's still happening.
Yeah.
You know, my parents have both passed away, so I don't have that to tap into that in terms of them sharing their knowledge with me.
Yeah.
Because when they were, as a teenager, young adult, I didn't want to hear it.
Yeah, of course.
You know, because to me, it was just like, you guys are just complaining to me. But, you know, it's, again, upon reflection, there were really important lessons being taught. I just wasn't ready to learn them.
Yeah.
And that's the reality of it. And so, my dad used to say, you don't care now, but you'll understand when you're older. I was like, whatever, Dad. If I don't understand now, why would I understand later on? But he was right.
We're dumb kids, right?
Yeah.
Our parents have so much wisdom that we take for granted as well, because, look, we're growing up between two systems, between two worlds. And that's the theme of this podcast this season.
Yeah.
It's that Vietnamese education, or that ethnic, the multicultural education from our parents who came from another land.
Yeah.
Right? And their adaptation and the way and mechanisms of survival to try and fit in at the same time, but to put food on the table for all of us.
Yeah.
And then when we walk outside our family's doors, it's another world.
It
all
is,
right?
yeah.
Aussie culture, mate.
Yeah. You know, I remember as a kid, like my parents used to have let my friends come and have sleepovers, and you know, we hang out, watch movies, and play games or whatever. And all my friends used to love coming over because my mum would always cook so much food.
Yeah.
And they just never really had Vietnamese food. So I really appreciated that. Introduced them into our world and our culture, and they'd always ask their parents to always come back and hang out and stay over. It was just it was such an integral part of my upbringing, allowing my parents opening up their space, their home.
Yeah.
Given that they didn't have much, but they were always so welcoming, no matter what. That's something that I carry to this day as well, and I try and be just as open to people around me as well.
Yeah.
But the two identities is just such a. There's always tension. There's always tension.
Yeah.
And I grew up in that environment with the tension. So while I got this beautiful, wholesome, like, you know, family dynamic around being open and inviting people in, there were times where I said, you just don't understand me. I need this, I need that. But they'd be like, well, that's not good for the family. Or it was just, it was challenging, especially because language barrier becomes an issue.
Yes.
So there are feelings that you can articulate in English, but you can't interpret in Vietnamese. And so it was hard, and mental health wasn't really discussed. Like, my dad probably didn't really believe in it. But he's also was a very traumatized man with the things that he'd witnessed and lived through. He essentially lived through 2 wars. You know, he grew up without a dad as well, because his dad died when he was really young.
Yeah.
He was one of 13 siblings
Yeah. Yeah.
in a country town. carrying bricks to earn a bit of money for the rest of the family.
Mm-hmm.
So as a kid, but you know, the decision again from his beginnings and my mum's beginnings
Mm-hmm.
to where I am now, where my sisters are at,
Yeah.
and the life that my son gets to live. I can't begin to describe how different it is, and that their dreams that they had for us are being achieved.
Yeah.
And I wish they were around to see it. So,
In 2 short generations.
Yeah.
As well. Their decision to go, we can't do this. We're out of here.
yeah, I think it's an incredible story.
Mm.
It's, you know, we always think about what we don't have, but I think when you focus more on what you do have, then life doesn't kind of seem so bad.
Life is sweeter.
It
when you
is.
appreciate what you have.
Yeah. Like I look at the life that my son has now. He's traveled more of the world than I did
Yeah, of course.
as a kid.
Yeah.
And that's something that my dad, you know, dreamed for us to be able to do.
Mm.
Funnily enough, for my dad, for a man who grew up in a village where he wore torn pants, he got to travel the world a lot in the end.
Yeah.
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 So he did pretty well.
But through your journey, through this story, but through your seeking,
Yeah.
right? You went to and retraced your parents' steps
Yes.
in the Thai refugee camp.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a wild story because I've had moments where I've just pulled up Google Maps and
Yeah.
I've looked at the Malaysian island where a lot of Vietnamese people settled
Yeah.
and were processed at the time, right? And it bubbled a lot of emotions in me, and I cried in front of the computer screen. And I don't cry a lot, if at all, right?
Yeah.
But I'm super curious about your journey to and retracing the steps
Yeah.
in the physical realm as well. That would have brought on.
Yeah, it was quite the experience. Very powerful. You know, my dad was a very stoic man. Never showed too many emotions because he just didn't want to show. You know, he grew up in that era. It was a weakness to show emotions.
Yeah.
The only time growing up I ever seen him cry was when he loved watching SBS, right? So it was like a documentary and they showed footage of boat people.
Yeah.
He lost it.
Yeah.
Never seen him cry before. So, you know, after he passed away in 2018. He did pretty well. He was like 83. So he lived a good life. I started wanting to unpack more about who I am. You know, when I was born here, he obviously gave me the name. It's Nguyen, Nam Vic, right? So in Vietnamese, you always say the surname, middle name, and first name, right? That's how you write it.
Yeah.
The funny part is when they enrolled me in primary school, they wrote down my middle name first, my first name middle, and surname.
Right. Yeah.
Hence why everyone calls me Nam.
Yeah. Gotcha.
My actual first name is Viet.
Aha.
And he named me after the country that we left.
Yeah.
So I never forget where I come from.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, lots of identity kind of that he was trying to hold on to that culture and tradition and moving to a new country. So when he passed away, I started questioning, you know, lots of thoughts around, well, who am I? You know, your parents are your origin story.
Yeah.
When they leave this world, and I think a lot of people experience this, you start going, well, who am I? This is who they built me to be, but who am I? Because especially in an Asian household, you're conditioned to look after your parents, and it's this big responsibility, and it carries a lot of weight, because you don't want to put them in a nursing home because they say it's not where it's just they're going there to die. And you don't want to put them through that, but at the same time, you're trying to say, hey, there are Vietnamese retirement homes now where you can feel comfortable. That kind of stuff, having to
Take them on the journey of.
yeah, he didn't want it.
Like planting seeds.
Seeds,
and
yeah.
things like that.
And so, upon his passing, all of a sudden, that responsibility, that and it's a horrible word to use, but that obligation, that guilt, washed away. And I didn't have to carry that burden anymore, because that's what it felt like.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then I was like, well, shit, I get to live my life. Because for the most part, you're raised to go, I'm doing this because I want to make sure my parents look like, I want to do this to make my dad proud. I want to, and all of a sudden, you're sad, you're grieving, you've lost your father.
Of course.
But at the same time, you got to contend with that responsibility is no longer there. How do I navigate that? And my son was still a baby. So I think that's when I really was able to go, okay, I can focus on where I want to go, what I want to do. I don't have to be worried about whether he's okay.
Yeah.
And it sounds kind of horrible, but that was the reality of that family structure being torn between two cultures.
Yeah.
How do I balance doing what's right for me versus doing what's right for my family?
Just living that
just
tension.
living that tension.
But it's fascinating, and it's true, right?
Yeah.
Your origin story is obviously your parents,
Yeah.
right? But now you are in control of the narrative.
Yes.
You're holding the pen. You can write what you want. It's your
Yeah.
life now.
It's my life now.
Without the obligations of having to take care of the folks
Yeah.
at the same time.
Yep.
So about the journey to Thailand, how?
Yeah.
how
Sorry,
was
I got
that?
caught up there,
No,
didn't
no,
I?
Please.
So it was. I didn't really think about visiting Songkla right up until I'd come out of a 5-year relationship. We were engaged, and I broke it off. And I started really again focusing in on, my parents' journey. How did they get here? And I think a big part of that was because my son also started wanting to understand his heritage. And there's no stronger motivation than when your children start going, Dad, I want to know who I am. I certainly didn't have that foresight when I was his age.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that motivated me to go, hey, maybe I need to go see what they saw. Maybe I need to go and retrace their footsteps to truly understand what their experiences was like.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be changed, but I still want to know. I want to see with my own eyes what they saw. I want to know what hope looked like for them. So it was, I've been thinking about it. I tried to rope my sister in. My older sister lives in Orange County, California.
All right.
Yeah. She was kind of, there wasn't much confidence that she was going to come with me. And then, because I've been thinking about it a lot, I had an opportunity this year where I thought, I'm going to go back to Vietnam for like a holiday and to DJ, which is, again, that was great. But I booked a flight to go from Vietnam to Thailand to Songkla. Everything I read about Songkla wasn't great in terms of like tourist. It's not a tourist destination for foreigners unless you're from Malaysia, right?
Yeah.
It was. I was filled with a lot of anxiety going there, and I was doing this journey by myself. So there was a lot of internal dialogue, and there was a lot of. I didn't really talk to anyone. This was a solo trip.
Wow.
I didn't really. The only time I'd speak to another human being was whether it's buying food
Transactions.
or but it was a completely solo trip that I knew I needed to do. I really, really wanted to retrace their footsteps there. The day before I landed, I think I got a bit of food poisoning, so I wasn't feeling great either. On the day that it was planned, like for me, I booked like my driver because let me take it back a couple of steps.
Sure.
The place itself, Songkla Beach, I tried to look for hotels around there. They were all booked out. But I'd already booked my flight.
Yeah.
So I was like, shit, where am I going to stay?
Yeah.
So I found like a hotel that was like an hour away.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, okay, that's a bit closer. I'll just pay for a driver.
Mm-hmm.
Initially, I booked this hotel, and then and then I did a Google map search and I looked at the place and I was like, oh no, that's where people go missing. So I cancelled that one.
Go
Missing.
missing.
It looks so dodgy on Google Maps, and I was like, this cannot be a legit hotel.
Yeah.
And so I found like a bigger one in Hat Yai, which is like the biggest town near Songkhla.
Sure.
And went there. I think there was some kind of creative festival on at the time, and that's why all the hotels were booked.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but a lot of Malaysians come there.
Mm-hmm.
And not everyone, like English isn't spoken widely. So there was lots of Google Translate,
Hand gestures.
lots of hand gestures. So on the day, I wasn't feeling great, but I was like, I can't stay in the hotel room. Like, I'm here for like 3 days. I've got to make the most of it. I've actually got to go. Like, even if I need to wear a diaper, I'm going to go, right? So,
Whoa.
sorry, TMI. But like, I was like, I've got to do it. Right? And so I had this great driver. What was her name? I think her name was Amy. It's really funny in the car ride because she was trying to set me up with her daughter.
That's what happens in Southeast Asia. Right.
Oh, you're very handsome, that kind of thing. And then she showed me a picture of her daughter. Like, oh, she's beautiful. Can you just get me to the beach?
No side quest this
Yeah,
time.
no side quests.
I've got a big mission.
Yeah. I'm here for a reason. It's not to get married. So, it was an hour drive, and she was explaining to me that, you know, because I booked her through Grab. She goes, you know, not many Grab drivers would be willing to do this trip for you. And I said, okay, well, you know, I'll pay you a bit more to get me there. You know, and we don't have to do it through the app.
Yeah.
Because she goes, and then I go, and I'll pay you a bit more to wait. She goes, because I'm not going to wait. I said, no, I'll pay you a bit more, and I'll wait for you. Okay, cool. Because that would have taken her away from her jobs in town.
Yeah.
By taking me that far away.
Yeah.
So we got there, and I think I got there early enough where there wasn't much of a crowd. Like, I got there just in time.
Yeah.
The beach was beautiful. It was stunning. The waters were crystal clear. You know, I just kind of found myself pondering, like, trying to imagine, you know, 6,000 refugees on this beach, on this beautiful beach, crammed, living in shelters, how it all worked, but this was hope for them. So imagine being in a boat. Well, my parents were on a boat for 7 days and 7 nights, rescued by a Thai fishing boat. Some of the crew, because my mum had really pale skin for a Vietnamese person, and they thought, my dad said to me, you know, oh, they thought she had really beautiful skin, and because my 2 sisters were still really young, you know, they gave them food and milk and that kind of thing. But yeah, they got taken to shore, and this is where they had to make a life-altering decision. So for me, be able to stand there on the very same shores that they did,
Yeah.
working out whether they were going to America or Australia,
Yeah.
or France even, that moment was not lost on me. You know, in the 70s, obviously there was no phones with cameras. The fact that they had some photos that we've been able to
Yeah.
keep from the refugee camp for me to use as a landmark, to go and find it even.
Yeah.
Just to work it out. Okay, you get told Songkhla, you look it up, but there was a photo of my mum sitting on a mermaid statue, and there's a story behind that too that I can't remember. But the mermaid is, I think it's something like the mermaid is symbolic of guiding the boats into shore.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my mum had a photo with my sister and her niece, I think it was, on this statue. And that's what I searched for. That's what I Googled. That's what I found. And yeah, I went and sat there and just kind of soaked it all in and try to really understand the enormity of being there for me. It was quite emotional.
Of course.
Because you just think back, well, what was my mum thinking about? Like, what was my dad thinking about? It's just about survival now. They couldn't leave the camp to go get food. They relied on donations. Luckily, they bumped into our cousins who had escaped as well.
Yeah.
So there was some family there. But they chose to go to America.
Yeah.
My parents chose to come here. But that beach, being there, it's called Samila Beach. You wouldn't know that that's what happened there 30 odd years ago.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a tourist hub now. It's a tourist destination. So when I got there, just as I was like kind of soaking it all in, a wave of Malaysian like tourists came, but they were really nice and they took photos for me.
Yeah.
Because that statue's a popular spot for taking photos.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, wow, thank you for sharing. It's that story. We were talking about tension, right? Straddling between two worlds and the privilege of having the tension of having both of these cultures, right? But when we compare our parents' stories, the tension they were holding was statelessness.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Statelessness.
No home.
They don't have a home.
No home.
But what they couldn't see was how their path could have unfolded, going to America, going to France, going to Australia.
Yeah.
Right? They were lucky that this happened at a time when it did.
Absolutely.
Imagine now.
Well, my older sister told me that, we were lucky to get out because people were stuck there for a number of years.
Right.
And then when the war ended, people who did not get approved to go live in another country were sent back to Vietnam.
Yeah.
And during that time, you did not want to get sent back to Vietnam. You did not want to do that. You were considered a traitor, and there was punishment and that kind of thing. So we were very lucky, blessed that, and again, I don't think they truly understood the gravity, not the gravity, but I guess truly understood how it would all play out. I lost my mum when I was really young. She passed away when she was 54, so she didn't get to see her vision come to life. So in many ways, I try and carry her spirit, that desire to have a better life for myself and my kids, or my son. And that's a real motivator for me. So I do a lot. I work a lot. I've got, 2 careers, possibly a third. But that's what drives me, is that they had a vision. And I think I speak for a lot of immigrant or refugee kids who come from refugee background, that we have to work double, sometimes 3 times as hard to achieve certain levels of what we consider to be success.
Yeah.
Or our vision of what it is we want for our family. And that comes down to simple things like, if I'm submitting a resume for a job, my name already stands out. If I had the same qualifications as John Smith compared to a Nam Nguyen, people are going to go with the one that they can say a lot easier. So I have to work twice as hard to get their attention.
Yeah.
That's before even meeting face to face.
Overcoming biases.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's the reality. That's the norm. Living in a country where it's not, where our names are not that common. As much as everyone thinks it's we joke about Nguyen being one of the most common surnames and stuff, but it's still there. And so, their ideas of hope, I think, is what drives, I think, myself and my sisters to continue to do what we do, and strive for that that comfortable life. Yeah.
So although you say the shackles have been broken when your parents passed, and that obligation and burden, if you will. But it still persists. Their spirit
does. The
lives
spirit.
on. And I see you figuratively holding like this ancestral torch
Yeah.
as you march forward.
Yeah.
But the beauty of that now is that you're holding the light for your son.
Yes.
You're not rummaging in the dark
No.
anymore.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I had to learn to reframe my own struggles and my own tensions with the relationship with my parents. Had to learn how to reframe that.
Yeah.
And my biggest teacher in that area is my son. Because when he asks questions about who he is and where he comes from, they're not tainted. Because he's still a child.
Yeah.
And so it helped me connect better with my parents' struggles. That I did not have the capacity or knowledge to do when they were still here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because your relationships are filled with, again, tension, experiences. So your mind is closed off to, well, for me anyway, was really closed off to their struggles. Because there was just so much conflict growing up, not just with my family, but within myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so now, with the knowledge that I have, I try and share it with, my son and anyone else who's listening.
So what lessons do you have for, let's say specifically, young Vietnamese Australians who are struggling to fit in, or they're living with such tension because they're living at home? There's a familial expectation of, hey, you must live life this way.
Yeah.
But they exit the doors and it's like, hang on a second, the script is different outside of home.
Yeah.
What do you have to say as lessons or guidance for young Vietnamese Australians who are struggling with tension within themselves and in their households?
I think the biggest lesson, or I guess some tips I would share, would be to really understand, find your passion. It can be more than one. Doesn't have to be one specific. Branch out, explore, try different things. That tension's always going to be there. And so you just got to learn how to manage. Find other people like yourself so you can share these stories. You know, we have this, I grew up not really having that.
Yeah.
And I think it's really important to connect with other people who are experiencing the same thing. So that you can just share and not feel so alone. I think that's the most important thing, is know that you're not alone. It's quite common experience. For the longest time, we just didn't talk about it.
Yeah.
And now we have people like yourself. We've got social media. We've got people all around the world sharing their experiences of what it's like to live in two different societies, bound by these cultural chains, so to speak. But for us, for this generation, we can break them, and we can do it respectfully. And we can do it with help. I think it's really important that there are more people out there who understand what you're going through and can help you navigate that as well. And I guess I was going to say, listen to your parents, because I didn't. But at some point you will.
Yeah.
At some point you will say, oh, damn, they were right. Also, I think it's really, really important that your parents understand your parents are humans too, and they make mistakes.
Yeah.
And when you view them as such, instead of just this authoritative figure, which, it happens in a hierarchical structure, understand that they're human. They make mistakes. We all make mistakes. Forgive them, forgive yourself. No one's perfect. Be kind.
Yeah.
I think that's be kind to yourself, be kind to your parents. Help them understand you.
Yeah.
I think they're the important lessons, because I didn't get to do some of those. So for those of you who've got the chance, and I know some parents are they're set in their ways, you just work around it.
Yeah. But with regrets for you because you couldn't
Yeah, I couldn't.
interact with your parents this way.
I don't think regret is the right word for me.
Sure.
It's because I didn't know better.
Yeah. Yep.
If I knew better,
Yep.
then
True.
perhaps
Yes.
I didn't know better, and I didn't know how to. I didn't know myself enough to be able to communicate that as well. And I think language barrier is also a big, big deal. So,
But it's wisdom, right?
It is.
I sense this here now. It's wisdom that you're
It is.
sharing here.
yeah,
It's the hard yards.
Hard
that
yards.
You've learnt, the exploration, the emotional tension that have been pulling you
yeah,
in so many different ways.
yeah,
But through modern Vietnam, it seems like it's the place to be at the moment. You've got a lot of
Yeah.
people, Vietnamese diaspora, returning or coming home,
Yes.
they call it. But I'm curious to find out from you what the Vietnamese hip-hop scene is like, and playing music and you're DJing there.
Yeah.
Right? Because their music is fire
It is
right now
So
as well.
It is. Look, I've only just started kind of dabbling in unpacking and like really trying to source and research and get to know all the artists there because it's popping. Like,
Yeah.
the Vietnamese hip hop scene is going off at the moment. You know, I linked in with a crew in Saigon who run parties and produce, and I was introduced to some of their rappers, and they're so talented. Man, these kids are like not just talented; they're stylish. They know what's up.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
yeah, they're taking influence from your K-pop and Japan and America, and they're just building their own style and their own sound. I mean, to be quite honest, I don't understand when they're rapping in Vietnamese.
Sure. Yeah.
But the beats that are being produced right now, like, it's bubbling and it has me excited. Mm-hmm. And I tell you why. When I was a teenager, I used to listen to R&B and hip hop when it wasn't mainstream.
Yeah.
I connected with that music because I felt like the struggle for African American artists at the time, I connected with that. The the struggles they were facing. And I was like, I feel the same rage, I feel the same anger, or I can see why that's happening, you know. But it wasn't on mainstream radio in Australia. This is how old I am. There was like one community radio program on PBS Sunday night, and that's where I got my fix for R&B hip hop.
Wow.
And then I would, and then Rage.
Yes.
I used to like wake up really early and make my own mixtapes on VHS. Mm-hmm. But they would only show hip hop or R&B clips like, you know, at like 4 or 5 in the morning.
Right.
Before they hit the top 100, which is then all, you know,
Yep.
your vanilla.
Your pops and
Your pop
things like
songs,
that.
yeah. So for me, that kind of music has always been a part of me and who I am. My introduction to Vietnamese music from my parents was all like galung, right?
Yeah.
Which is like Vietnamese
Folk music.
Yeah. And Vietnamese music for me growing up was all really depressing because, which is to be fair, because it was a country going through war. And so the songs always reflect the current climate of the people. I just found it really depressing though.
Yeah.
Like it's just something I didn't want to listen to.
Yeah.
And then you'd have your variety shows like your Paris by Nights when, you know, you got your other artists kind of getting into new wave and that disco and more poppy kind of stuff. Again, not my kind of music.
Yeah.
And so to see Vietnamese music evolve from even that into what it is now and making it more accessible even
Yeah.
is incredible. And I love it. I was like, that's me. I want to move that. These are my people. Because it's what I really connect with. So yeah, and when you were talking about people, diaspora people coming back, I think it's great because it's helping build, you know, a country that was so many years recovering from the war.
Yeah.
It was beautiful to see. I was only there for a week, but I just noticed all the changes and the different. I was there 10 years ago, and I DJed there 10 years ago as well.
Right. Wow.
But it's just gone on another level and I remember reading early this year that Vietnam has been rated for the 4th year in a row the most affordable country to live in.
Yeah, right.
So the cost of living is great. But then there's a price for that as well. So when you go back as a Yik girl, you know, yeah, you're Vietnamese, but
You're not really.
you're not really. You can only live in the apartments that cost a bit more, but it's still cheap for us.
Yeah, okay.
But no, I want to go back every year now. Mm-hmm. That's part of my journey now, to go back every year to learn more about myself, learn more about where I come from, learn more about the country, really dig in, try and link in with more people there, build a network. You know, the idea is one day to go and live there for a while.
Awesome. Yeah.
You know, that's something my dad wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it's
really.
funny that I want to do that now, because I tell you what, 10 years ago, that was not, that didn't enter my mind.
Yeah, yeah.
But now, Vietnam is popping. Like it's predicted to hit its peak in about 10 years on a social, economic scale.
Yeah.
Like infrastructure is there, everything's being modernized. Like all those things that I, you know, based on my first experience in Vietnam, has just changed exponentially.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I've been back in the last, I was there at the start of the year and again last August as well. So I spent 2 months there in a short span of time. But what I sense there is hope.
Yeah.
There's more hope because in a country that was torn by war, and it's funny that we talk about this war a lot, but young people, not even in their consciousness, right? So it's like, hang on, the young people are like to me, why are you hanging on to this? And even the government, they're like, they can't talk like this because it's taboo. It's de facto taboo. These topics are all taboo.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to talk about this,
I know.
right? I can get cancelled, but but the thing is, it's part of our family story.
Yeah.
It's part of our parents' journey, our grandparents' journey as well. And that's why we're discussing it so that we can relieve that tension.
Yeah.
So that we can seek some understanding of what the hell has been going on all this time.
Yeah. Well, when you think about it, well, it's been 50 years since the war.
Yeah.
A lot of the people that were kind of in the, like, for the most part, have all kind of passed away or moved on. And I could completely connect with what you're saying. It's like, it's not even a thing now. You don't even talk about it. It's like
not even in the consciousness. This is history.
It's history.
It's history.
It's so old now.
But for us, it's somewhat remnants.
It is.
Yeah, remnants.
I've got Vietnamese friends who I spoke to recently, and they was like, yeah, my parents are dead set. Like, they still don't want to go back because they're scared. It's like, no, it's not like that anymore.
Yeah.
It's completely changed.
And
but that fear,
they grew up in a different time.
way different time. Also, my Vietnamese, I realise, is stuck in the 70s.
Yeah.
So I don't understand any of the slang. I don't understand. I don't know about you, Lim, but I'm just like, because the Vietnamese I learned was from my parents and their era.
It's dated, yeah.
It's dated.
Words have been retired.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know about this. It's like, oh shit, I'm old.
But it's a journey to reintegrate or rediscover the origins as well. And with the hope element, Vietnam, it's on its way up.
Yeah.
So it's full of hope.
It's exciting.
It's very exciting.
It's really exciting.
But in terms of the Western world, you see a decline in hope and distrust.
Yes.
So it's like opposite journeys.
Yeah, it is,
right?
isn't it?
Yeah. So
I
that's
agree.
it explains a lot of the diaspora returning.
Yeah.
To find more hope, but at the same time seek answers within themselves as well.
Yeah. That's definitely my journey. You know, I'd like to build a bridge somehow. I don't know how, but I'm working through that. Just within music as well, because there's artists in Vietnam that I'd like to bring here, and vice versa. Like, let's get this exchange going. Like, I want them to be exposed to the rest of the world, what they're doing, their music, their craft, their talents. But also here for us, I think one of the things that I've kind of realized is that for a lot of creatives here, in music and DJing and that kind of thing, we're stuck in our bubble.
Okay.
And so we don't understand that that there's more out there. Like for me, I don't see people who look like me on your big festival lineups. Like it's just not going to happen.
And
But that's just a personal, yeah.
but that's what I love about the operatives,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
Because you're highlighting talent that is representative of the Australian population.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite artists to come through is Billy Davis.
Will. Yep.
Billy Davis and the Good Lords,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
That crew, whenever
Yeah.
they're playing, it's magic,
Yeah.
right? And each individual is a beautiful human and artist in their own right.
Yeah, absolutely.
As well. So, yeah, tell me more about the operatives.
You know, we've always tried to champion the underground sound, I suppose. Always kind of try to promote diversity, inclusivity. It really just started off for Jerry anyway. Just started off being a drum and bass, passion for drum and bass. He's from Singapore originally, but as the operatives grew, so did the genres and different types of artists. And it really helped formulate my identity as a DJ as well. So I was no longer pigeonholing myself into just being a drum and bass DJ. I started playing all different types of music from all around the world, all around the globe, without ever really compromising or tapping into the mainstream, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So more grassroots, more community orientated. It's just a collective of artists that come together every now and again, and that evolves as well. So some artists will stay for a while and then they leave and that kind of thing. But you know, kudos to Jerry, 20 years in the game, still going strong.
Very strong.
Yeah. He has a really good knack for identifying new artists as well, building relationships and networking. That's what I've learned from him.
Yeah.
It's again, I could probably do a whole podcast on just the operatives.
I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'm sure
with the
you
things
could.
that I've been able to experience, seen, and heard. But yeah, 20 years in the game, like my mind still boggles that we've been able to do that for that long. Given that I've seen so many promoters come and go, I've seen so many festivals come and go, and we're still here.
Yeah.
Like,
And rest assured, the operatives can throw a bloody good party.
yeah.
Right.
Well, Jerry, for the 20 years, has thrown 20 parties this year with international artists.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I don't know how he does it because I step back, but 20 years is a hefty number to try and pull off in a year. But so we've got another gig actually coming up on the 30th of November at Misfits. We've got an artist named Ari. She's Indian British. She's also a journalist, but also a DJ.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that one. So yeah, we always have diverse artists come through, like, always. And Jerry's always been a big advocate for that.
Yeah.
Which is really important.
Yeah.
You know, for me, my next steps is trying to find and link in with any Vietnamese Australian DJs, musicians, artists. Let's build, let's work, let's get together. I can use my experience, my knowledge to share, help them navigate, maybe break into the industry. I just know that there are other people like me out there.
100%.
I just don't know who you are.
You don't have to be an accountant or a lawyer or an engineer or a doctor.
Yeah.
You can do cool things like Nam.
You can do both.
Yeah.
You can be a doctor. You can be a doctor and a DJ.
True. Yeah, of course.
Right? I guess my message is, don't get boxed in. Don't think that you have to adhere to certain, career or advice from family because they think they know what's best for you. That's their intention, but you know what's best for you. You know what path you want to take. And if you want to do this as a side time hustle, but that becomes your full-time thing, great, because you can always go back to being a doctor. You can always go back to being a lawyer because you got the degree.
Yeah.
Take that risk. No risk, no story. Take that chance. You might upset some people. Never ask for permission. Ask for forgiveness.
Yeah, I love that one. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, for anyone out there in the community, Vietnamese Australian, who are struggling with that, reach out. I'm happy to have a chat.
Yeah, sweet.
Like, you know, we're not always going to make our parents happy. And we can't live in fear of making them sad or angry or upset, because then you stop yourself from hitting your potential. You got to reach where you want to go, because at the end of the day, when when you're lying there on your deathbed and you're, well, what did I do? What did I do for myself? What made me happy? Like,
But this is the tension, right?
It is the tension.
This is the contradiction.
This is the contradiction.
About living in both worlds.
Correct.
Right? You gave advice on both.
Yes.
But they don't meet in harmony, right? They're pulling and tugging at the same time, which is fascinating.
It is. And that's something that I've struggled with all my life, right? But yeah, do what makes you happy, because that's the most important thing.
Yeah.
It's your life. You get one shot at life. Yeah.
That's beautiful, and to be continued.
Yeah.
I think this conversation, we can dive into so many different avenues
Yeah.
on the next one as well. But yeah, I'd love to work together with you to somehow galvanize the Vietnamese Australian community, and then just show them, I think, some of your work as well, because your story is not shown in certain places in the community as well, which I think would be fantastic to highlight as well.
Great.
So when we end our podcast, we like to ask our 3 questions.
Yes.
So the first one is, what are you grateful for, Nam?
I'm grateful for my son. Every day he's my teacher. I couldn't ask for a better teacher. I think that's the biggest thing that I have.
Yeah.
My gratitude for my son.
And so the second question is, what have you realized?
That self-discovery is a lifelong journey. And you have to be kind to yourself. You know, we all have our ebbs and flows, but you never stop learning. That self-discovery, you think you've finally worked it out, but it keeps going.
So it takes a lifetime.
It takes a lifetime.
Or many lifetimes.
Many lifetimes. and the older you get, the less you know. In your 20s, you know everything. In your 30s, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm okay. In your 40s, like, fuck, I don't know anything.
I don't know shit.
Shit. Being an adult's hard.
Yeah. Even at 40, 46.
Shit. At 50, oh, my knees hurt. So.
Yeah. And so our last question is, what is a question that you ask yourself?
Am I happy?
Am I happy? That's a good one.
It is.
That's a really good one.
Yeah.
And so where can people find you and your work?
Instagram, at Nam Nguyen, but Nam, Newen. Because the other one's taken like probably 20 years ago.
That's what life of a Nguyen, right?
Yeah. That's my social media, and you can DM me there. That's the main one that I use at the moment. But I do have Facebook, but I don't really use that anymore. I think I've passed the part where I sign up for TikTok.
Yeah.
But yeah, at this stage, just Instagram's the best way to get at me.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
What an incredible conversation and experience just to have you on the podcast and dive into your story and others as well.
Yeah, Liam, thank you for having me on. It's been an honour. Thank you for providing a space that allows people like myself to share my story. Yeah, it's been great.
It's an honour. Thank you so much.
Thank you.